In this video, we're going to look at response and survival behaviour section, specifically the difference between innate and learned behaviours. Now, you might know what those words mean already, but if not, we will look through them. We're on the very last section of the course. We've made it, so we'll be going on to revision after this and then your test. So firstly, we'll look at innate behaviour. We'll identify which behaviours animals are born with. So how do kittens know how to hunt? Maybe pause the video, have we think, how does a kitten know how to hunt? Well, the answer is it's an innate behaviour. It's something that is inbuilt within the kitten. It's really, really interesting. These are things that the cat knows how to do automatically without having to be taught when it's born. There are some things about hunting that is taught by the parent, some that's found by trial and error, what we think of as learned behaviours, but a lot of this, the pouncing, the kind of sloping around, how to do this is innate. So we're going to define the following things, innate and learned behaviours, and complete a finger maze experiment. The kitten was most likely adopted and separated from its mother at a young age and never really got to learn how to stalk and pounce. How does it know? Some things don't need to be taught. This, for ethical reasons, is not a picture of a cat eating a mouse. This is, I think, some kind of fur-based tail. And it doesn't really need to be taught how to hunt. Innate behaviours are instinctual. They happen naturally. All members of a species perform the innate behaviour in the same way. Most innate behaviours are important to survival. So in your notes, this is actually a need to know. Spiders can spin their complex webs without having to learn it from other spiders. Interestingly, if you give spiders certain drugs and chemicals that are stimulants or relaxants or that change the way the brain works, you can change the shape of their webs. When a snail is threatened with danger, it retreats quickly into its shell. This is an automatic and protective response. These are what we in humans would think of as reflexes. So reflexes are fast, they're automatic, and they're protective. If you see a ball coming towards you, you will raise your hands as quick as you can. This happens without you having to think about it, and it's a protective response. So it says the brain is not involved in a reflex reaction. The brain doesn't get the message before the action is carried out. So if you put your hand on something hot, your sensory cells in your fingers will feel that. It will travel up what's called the sensory nerve to your central nervous system, which starts at your spinal cord from that side. Your spinal cord will make the decision that is probably need to be moving your hand off that hot thing pretty quick. So as well as sending a message up to your brain to say your hand's on something hot, it immediately sends a contract that muscle signal down what's called the motor nerve to your arm. So it's not something complicated. You're not going to put your hand on a fire and then do a double backflip with a half twist half the way through the middle. That's a far too complex thing for a reflex to do. But you put your hand on something hot and your bicep will immediately contract. That's a simple thing that can just be pre-programmed into your nervous system. After that, you'll notice that your hand starts to get hot and starts to get sore. By that point, your hand is already out of danger, but the signals going up to your brain will have reached there by now. So these things are fast, they're automatic, so you don't need to think about them, and they help protect you. So no thought and no delay. Reflex actions, so think about what reflex will prevent objects entering your windpipe, will prevent things entering your nose, and will prevent things sitting on your eyes. So coughing prevents things from getting stuck in your windpipe, sneezing from the nasal passages, and blinking from the eyes. So see if you can answer these questions in your jotter just as we pause for progress. Okay, pause the video if you haven't already answered them. So an innate response is something that is instinctual and inbuilt. It does not need to be learned. All members of a species carry it out the same way, and it's usually reflexive. It's quite fast. Give an example of an innate response. So that could be things like hunting in cats. It could be things like retreating into the shell in snails, and things like reflexes. 3 features of a reflex reaction are that they are fast, automatic, and protective. For learned behaviours, what is a learned behaviour? Think about, we know from innate what innate behaviour is. How does that differ from other behaviours? So learned behaviours must be developed through experience or by being taught. Can you think of any behaviours you have learned? Maybe bad behaviours or good behaviours? So walking is, for some, interestingly, that the person who wrote this put it in, it is semi-taught. However, children will learn to walk on their own. You don't really need to teach them. Talking, again, ironically, certain parts of speech and language, certain areas of being good at singing, for example, are taught, but talking in itself is innate. Writing is not innate. This is a good example. It's learned. You have to be taught how to do it or learn it by practice. And playing football, if you want to be good at it at least, is learned or taught. So, how does the baby learn to talk? It mimics the sounds that it hears. It tries out different sounds. I can tell you, someone with a 6-month-old, even before they learn to talk, they find out the full range of sounds that their mouths can make. How to learn what to eat? Again, trial and error. So, habituation. Why do organisms hide in their shell? Before we move on past the speech and language thing with children, it's very sad and interesting. There, in Romania, there was a guy in charge called Ceausescu, and a lot of children, for various reasons, ended up in orphanages. Um, and there wasn't a lot of very good care in these orphanages. So if you imagine a corridor with just rooms, and the children were in these rooms with no interaction with humans, they just got food and they got water, they got to go to the toilet. Along this corridor, if you think from right to left, if there were, say, 20 rooms, at the very left-hand side of the corridor was where the kitchen was and where the adults who were managing the facility would be. And the children who, even those adults never actually communicated with the children whose rooms were closest to the kitchen and staff meeting area developed better language than the ones who were further away because they could hear more of it. And it was on a perfectly graduated scale. The further away they were, the less they learned, but also the less brain development they had. Speech and language in humans is part of developing your actual physical brain. So the children who stayed further away from that staff room, their brains were less developed. So why do organisms hide in their shell when threatened? It's an instinctual reaction to avoid predation. But there's a thing called habituation. If you tap on a snail's shell, what will happen? It will go back into its shell. Then you wait until it comes back out, and because you're an unpleasant person, you tap it again, and it goes back into its shell really quick. If you keep waiting until it comes out and tapping its shell, keeps going back in, it'll go back in slower and slower and slower, and eventually becomes habituated. It gets used to the fact that it is wasting energy by hiding, and you're clearly not actually going to eat it. So habituation is this thing. You get used to a stimulus, and you stop wasting energy by reacting to it. So use your phones or iPads to research, imprinting, which is very interesting, group behaviour in Japanese macaques, and communication in bees. Check your learning. So what is learned behaviour? Examples of learned behaviour and habituation. So learned behaviour is something which either by teaching or by experience is ingrained in the brain. An example of learned behaviour are things like walking, talking, playing football, singing, cooking, anything really that's a learned behaviour. What is habituation? It's when over time an individual stops reacting to a stimulus because it's found not to be harmful. At the back of your booklets you have a finger maze, so put your finger at the start, and then without going over any of the black lines, try and make your way all the way to the end of the finger maze. Record how you can have a go at it first if you want, and then after that do it 10 times, and each time record how long it takes you to get from the start to the end. You could find that every time you do it you get a little bit faster, till eventually around the 6th or 7th you reach a kind of plateau where you actually go kind of up and down 5 seconds, so you get faster, slower, faster, slower, faster, slower, but you reached your best time. Okay, so that was learned behaviours. Hopefully we know the difference between learned and innate behaviours. We know about reflex reactions, and we know about habituation and finger mazes. If you've got any questions, please do ask.